this one. My plan is just to talk on let me just go to so the objectives is, basically I'm just going to go over like the pretty basics, what are the kinds of AI that are applicable in healthcare, what are the current clinical applications, and of course AI comes with a lot of unique challenges and ethics and regulation, which the pediatrics just published a paper this month on ethics and regulations on AI and future directions. So this is a slide that basically shows, although it makes it pretty easy on the upfront, at the user end when we use the AI, it's pretty easy, but it involves a lot of back-end work. So for example, it involves a lot of data collection, then data storage, and then cleaning the data, then making the data useful for what we're looking. And the first part of that is you have to define the problem. So if you are looking at, for example, I need to develop a sepsis algorithm that identifies patients who are at high risk for sepsis, alerts the team, and then provides guidance on how to do. So first we have to define a problem, and it could be anything. And I'm actually working on writing up something about neonatal mortality. If you want to decrease the neonatal mortality related to premature births, I think it starts with antenatal. So how do we go about, looking at the risk factors that occur in the mom that lead to, premature births and neonatal mortality? So then it involves checking, telling the AI model that, okay, you figure out what the blood pressures are, alert if the blood pressures are higher, and then basically use that data to alert the team, and sometimes we also integrate medical devices because the blood pressure comes from the medical device. So this is the whole thing that first you have to tell the model that this is what I'm looking for, and once you tell the model that that's what you're looking for in the data, then you have to collect the data. And this is all important because a lot of regulations are around this data collection, data cleaning, and data management. So this is all HIPAA, PHI data. So then you basically tell the data, you gather the data, and usually for medical data, it's gathered from, and again, the data could be structured or unstructured. Unstructured is, it doesn't have much definition to it as you're collecting the data, so you collect it, clean it, and then you define it. And it could be from the electronic medical records, from medical devices, from monitors, from research database. And once you collect the data, you prepare it. So you have to take away all the clutter, you clean it, and then you store it. And once you store it, then you build a model. And once you build a model, then you have to validate the model and then check it for accuracies. And then that's when you deploy and monitor. So there is a lot of work that goes in the back end as you're developing these AI algorithms and AI modules. So in terms of like the learning, so when you have all this data and you have a defined problem, then you have to figure out what kind of model do you want to use to deploy the final product. And some of the models, I'm sure you're all familiar with it. I just want to put them in the context of the clinical settings. So large language models, basically, we can think it as a super smart chatbot or super smart chat GPT. It's just something you're all familiar with. It reads and writes human language really well. So in healthcare, the way we can use these large language models is it can help write clinical notes. A couple of things that are, I think in United States now, it's pretty common to use a scribe, where you just, as you're talking with the patient, it's just scribing everything. It removes all the hallucinations, non-medical stuff, and this creates as you're talking with the patient, it just creates the whole entire notes for you. So that's where these large language models are useful. And the next one is called machine learning. So this is the AI that actually learns from data. So what it does is it looking into the data for patterns. And then, for example, if it saw a pattern, then it gives a warning signal. For example, if it sees a CRP of like 100, it gives a warning that this might be something important to look at. Then you have decision models, which basically tells, so you have all this data, you gave the warning sign what to do next, and that's what it aids in. And then you have natural language processing, which means it learns from, it doesn't need a code. Normally, when you want to tell a computer something, you have to put it in a code form, but in the NLM processing, it can just read the text, it can read the language, and then it can come up with a solution. And then you have deep learning, which is a powerful type of machine learning, and it can analyze imagings and MRIs. So then you take all these models, and then you want to do something, you want to achieve something at the end of, with these models, and this is what you're going to do. So in descriptive AI, here it's basically, this is something that you use in dashboards, in creating the dashboard. So AI-powered dashboard in NICU that aggregates all the real-time vital signs from monitors and just summarizes a neonate condition. So this is called a descriptive. So it's just taking the existing data that's there, and then it's coming, and then it's creating a dashboard and telling you what's actually going on. And the next one is predictive. So, okay, now you have all this data, that it described all this data, so what are you going to do with that? So it takes this data, and then the algorithms, the way they function is then they predict something. So it predicts, it has all this data from the lab, from the monitors, and it takes all this data and it says, okay, this patient with this particular data is at risk for neonatal sepsis or respiratory failure based on all this data. So it helps you identify this, risk stratify the patient so that you can identify problems earlier and helps with early intervention. And then prescriptive AI. So once you found that, okay, you stratified, okay, this patient is at higher risk for something, then the prescriptive AI comes in and it say, okay, this is the problem and this is what you need to do for it. For example, if you have a sepsis algorithm and if you have identified a patient with high risk for septic shock, then it kind of guides you, the patient at high risk for septic shock, these antibiotics of choice, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have generative AI, which basically generative models that produce synthetic, mostly related to the imaging, and enhances model accuracy while protecting sensitive data. And then not the latest, but the upcoming thing is called agentic AI. And this agentic AI actually doesn't need any coding, and it is embedded in some of the telehealth platforms that can automatically triage pediatric patients, schedule follow-ups, and escalate urgent cases to clinicians. So, okay, we have all this information, and so how can we apply this information? So up front, it looks like this is great. For any person who is a physician, it's very intuitive to start thinking that, okay, I can use it in this situation, But again, it's pretty complex collecting the data, and there are certain there is a study that just came up that actually looked at how are physicians applying this AI in neonatal medicine. So this is a study that was conducted, and what they did was they did a systematic research for studies published within a specific time frame. I think it's from 2017 to 2022, and they were able to categorize field and determine the outcomes. So these studies are based on all these studies. They kind of like looked at what are the outcomes that this study looked at, what is the field they looked at, and what is the model of the AI that looked at, and what technologies that they used in AI adoption. So this is a study that looked at all of that. And these are the potential applications that they found useful in neonatal medicine, which includes early prediction of bronchopulmonary dysplasia, AI-assisted ultrasound analysis that could improve IVH detection and prognostic capabilities, and AI models identifying early detection of late-onset sepsis, and AI models with necrotizing enterocolitis. So what they have found is that deep learning is highly effective this study looked at other studies that they have used AI in this particular application. So advancement in medical imaging. So deep learning is highly effective in image analysis and diagnosis and prediction of outcomes such as retinopathy of prematurity. So with the assistance of AI, they can define and be more objective about ROP. And they're also some studies are also looking to predict the neurodevelopmental outcomes and motor outcomes in preterm infants using brain MRI data. So they developed AI algorithms to look at the MRI data and then to extract data that would help them in predicting neurodevelopment outcomes and motor outcomes. And again, as I mentioned, some of the studies have looked at improving and understanding the risk stratification using the AI models. And one of the examples is the BPD and analysis determinants of chronic lung disease in very low birth weight infants. These, again, they used AI algorithms for predicting outcomes related to pulmonary hypertension too. And then the third use case scenario was data-driven insights and predictive models that translated large amounts of healthcare data to actionable insights. This application was, I think one of these applications that they tested was to look at the length of stay and mortality risk. And for the length of stay, prediction was very helpful in allocating hospital resources, especially the nursing and staff. And they've also done few of the studies looked at personalized neonatal care intervention, looking at the predictors and risk stratification based on each neonate and the conditions that they were having. So these are the applications are currently being studied and in neonatal medicine. There are certain use cases in pediatrics, but in the interest of time, I'm going to skip them. But I know there is one physician here who's looking at autism and neurodevelopmental disorders. So there are screening tools that have used AI algorithms to help diagnose autism. And these are, anybody's interested, I have the references. And one of the major other places where AI can have impact is public health impact, and in government implementation strategies. And I think that will make a broader impact in using the AI models. While everything looks interesting, everything looks like it's promising, I think there is a lot of challenges that are embedded in it, and unless you look for it, you may not be aware. And that's why it requires a lot of rigorous research, and quality improvement methodology is very essential, especially when there can be a lot of roadblocks and challenges through every step. I think one of them is in data collection, so incomplete or unbalanced data. If you're looking at data from one particular demographics, then you'll be missing, it'll be a biased data if it doesn't include diverse group of populations. And we have to remember that eventually this is the data that is determining the model and validating the model. So if you don't have proper data, it might not be applicable clinically at the end of it. So it's really important to have unbiased, diverse population included in the data. Again, in the data processing, when we looked at that data processing, there could be improper data labeling, lack of provenance, inconsistent practices across several NICUs throughout the world can kind of mess up with the data processing. There are data storage issues and biases in data and algorithms. There is errors and noise that they call as hallucinations, sometimes poor data aggregation and irrelevant data. So while people are really enthusiastic to deploy these models, I think these are all challenges that has to be kept in mind. And that leads to the upcoming regulatory bodies that are looking at all of this. And these regulatory bodies are just evolving. As AI is evolving, these are evolving. They are European Pediatric Association, AI frameworks from the World Health Organization. None of them is very specific for pediatrics, but there is pediatrics definitely, and neonatal health care definitely can be on the same guidelines. And there is a latest publication in pediatrics that came up this month, and they're having a National Academy of Medicine, which is a non-governmental institution that advises the nation on health and medical issues. And they are developing an AI code of conduct right now. So. In terms of there are action areas needing attention that pediatrics just published. The basic framework is similar both for adults and for pediatrics, but as we know, neonates and pediatrics pose different challenges, and there are action areas that they are calling out for pediatric-specific testing. Oftentimes, adults have, everything is mostly tailored to adults, so when we are using these models, we have to be mindful that we have to do pediatric-specific testing and validation, and then integrating AI literacy and digital ethics into the medical education and continuous training, in institutional policies, governance on AI ethics board and oversight committees. So they're strongly encouraging to have these committees in institutions, so to oversee the AI development. And of course, data privacy and confidentiality. I saw on the brochure that is something that they're going to discuss next. So that's also very important. Thank you so much. I do have a couple of things. I think when I was listening to all of the lectures in the morning, the three things that came up again and again when people were addressing underserved places is access. I think access is a big question when we have to provide care in this. And there are platforms that are available, telehealth platforms, I'm sure all of you know it. And I have one such platform, and I'm very happy to give it for free if anybody wants to use a telehealth platform to access remote areas and to provide any consultation. Yeah, that's any questions I'm happy to answer.